Before we start this conversation, though I think everyone knows who our guests are, but for the benefit of the few people that might not know, I will start with a short introduction. I will start with Ms. Latika Nath, who is a wildlife photographer, a wildlife conservationist. She's also an author. She's also known as the Tiger Princess for her exemplary work that she's done in the field of wildlife conservation, especially for tigers. So it's a huge pleasure, ma'am, to have you with
Thank
us.
you. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for coming.
Thank you.
Next up is Mr. Kunal Rajput, who is a commercial photographer who specializes in photographing liquids. That's something that I look forward to talking to you about during the session. And I mean, he's shot for all the high-end brands that you can think of, which has led to his work being published in all sorts of magazines, billboards, and hoardings. So again, a great pleasure to have you here, Kunal. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Mr. Manik Bag, who primarily identifies as a storyteller, and his medium for telling his stories, his photos and videos. And he is also sort of a representation today here for the new age content creators that we have. So it's a great pleasure to have you, Mr. Manik. Thank you.
Thank you. Great pleasure to be here.
Perfect. So again, before we start the session, anything special that you guys done on the occasion of World Photography Day?
I think
Anyone?
life is the most special thing today.
No,
Lovely,
so I'm very
lovely.
fortunate because there's that wonderful exhibition that's opened at Museo Camera in Delhi, which is 75 years of Indian images. And I'm one of the people whose work is featured there. So I'm very excited to be going for the preview. As soon as we finish this, I'm going to rush up there. It's a fantastic review, 82 photographers from 1947 to now.
Oh, really nice, very nice.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Hello. I think with that we're good to go with the session. So, ma'am, I would first put this question to Latika, ma'am. Ma'am, if you could just tell us in brief about your photography journey and how did you end up choosing the genre in photography that you chose? What's the story behind that?
Okay, so my father, my grandfather, everybody used to take pictures. And as a child, when we went on holidays, I was always handed a camera and said, have a good time and make some images. So I grew up either watching them shoot or shooting myself. And as I became a wildlife biologist and I started to study animal behavior, it became very obvious that I needed to take photographs to document behavior. And I started doing more and more photography because of that. And, I have a master's on elephant conservation, a doctorate on tiger conservation. So I spent pretty much my entire college years, university, and since then I've been in a jungle pretty much the whole year, every year. So I just, spend a lot of time doing photography, and it's just something that came very naturally to me. And therefore, when I started sharing images, people began to know me for my work in wildlife. And that's how it came about.
I think then it's safe to say that probably wildlife conservation and wildlife is pretty much all you know. I mean, that sounds like it's just your life.
It's my life, but it's not all I know. There's a lot more to me than just my wildlife work. But yeah,
Okay.
it's a major part of what I do and the person I am.
Lovely. Manik-san, the same question for you. What's your story behind the photographer that we know?
So firstly, Sahil, I must say that I'm humbled because the company you've given me is, it's easy to be humbled by them. And so I've gone through both of the portfolio. So, I mean, it feels great to be here with you. firstly, I just wanted to get that out first. Photography, you see, I think there's something very true in what Latika said, because whoever I've spoken to, whoever is passionate about photography, it takes a very long time to start liking your own pictures. They say that, writers mostly they write a few lines and they go to bed, and the next day they hate their writing, so they tear the pages off and say, what is this? This is nonsense. And so therefore, for any creator, the journey is very long. My journey is relatively short, where I've consciously begun sort of, I picked up the camera and started doing something very consciously. But where I connect with Latika Ma'am is also the fact that, from my very childhood, my father was a huge photography fan. He used to have, so in my house there was always a 2-3 cameras lying around, but I wanted my own. I remember, and he was very protective about his camera. He wouldn't let me use it at all. So I used to steal money from him every day, 5 rupees, 10 rupees, to buy a camera. I remember, and I eventually bought it. So so back then, this film cameras and all that, it was difficult, to learn on film camera. So I think initially when I started it was not very encouraging, because I would not like the results. I get disappointed, so I kind of left it for a while, and then I reconnected back with it about some 7-8 years back, when I actually just started traveling. I think travel was a reason, that was a trigger and spark to. The other thing was also because I write, right? So I always feel that for the new medium, stories and pictures, visual and the spoken words, when they come together, they they create that much more powerful impact. So writing was another trigger for me. So how can I express the same thing with photography? So therefore, street photography is a very important thing for me. Travel photography is a very important thing for me. Broadly that.
Very interesting. I think all of us resonate with the fact that we always think that our photographs or whatever our creative work is, it can always be better. I think there's no photographer out there who just see his photo and say, this is perfect. There's always scope for improvement.
Yeah, the best photos we created.
Correct. So, Kunal, how did this product photography thing start, and why specifically liquids? What's the fascination there?
Yeah, sure. So, it started all in the engineering days. So I was in Pune in those days, and I had borrowed my father's camera, which was a Nikon point and shoot. And I just, randomly started taking photos of landscapes, nature, wildlife, around Pune. And 2 of my photos got picked up by Better Photography, and they were published in magazine.
Okay.
So, that gave me a lot of motivation and confidence. And I started sharing my photos on a platform called Orkut back in those days. It was something similar to Facebook. So, and for the first time in my life, I was being praised for something that I did. So, that after that, I really took a deep dive in photography, and I said, I want to learn it. I want to learn this art. What exactly is photography? I want to understand light. And so after my engineering, I got placed with Infosys in Mysore. And after my placement, my father gifted me a laptop. And I realized that in the Infosys campus, we were not allowed to carry our own laptops. So luckily, we had an option to return it back. And the money that I got from returning the laptop, I picked up my first DSLR, which was the Nikon D90. And I went to Mysore, in the Infosys campus, they have a beautiful, beautiful place. And with my first salary, I got this lens, my first telephoto lens, sort of 70 to 300 mm. And I went crazy, All I was doing in the Infosys campus was taking pictures out in the wild. So nature, landscape, birds, and it was like the best of my life, I hated sitting in front of the computer writing software codes. So this one thing was very clear to me, that what I want to do in my life is photography, whatever it takes. And once I had this clarity, I left my software job, and I wanted to do something in photography. So I started exploring various options, and very soon I realized that if I have to make a living in photography, I have to either go for commercial work or weddings. And weddings I didn't have much interest in. So in commercial photography, I was just experimenting with different things, and I realized that with the little space that I had in my room in Pune, all I could do was, start with basic product photography sets. I could do such products at the very restricted space that I had. So I started with that, and the moment I explored product photography, I completely fell in love with it. Because I had absolute control on lighting, and the physics involved in product photography was so interesting. So that is why I went into product photography. And after spending, let's say, around 12 years doing commercial work, now I can say that product photography is one of the coolest jobs ever. I mean, I get to meet so many interesting people from this industry. I get to play with all the latest tech, the latest cameras, lenses, lights, and gadgets and whatnot. And I create some crazy stuff in the studio, throwing liquids and here and there, some crazy stuff. And in the end, it pays well. So, that is how I went into product photography and absolutely love what I do.
Lovely, lovely. I think with your story, I resonate the most because I am also a photographer. Oh, sorry, an engineer who started photography in engineering college,
Right.
and yeah, just never left the camera after that.
Yeah.
Engineering is just in the past, and yeah, very nice, very nice. So, as photographers, we always end up in good and bad situations, uh, situations that test us as creative people, as photographers. So, my next question, Latika ma'am, is what is the most challenging situation that you've been in, and in a photography sense, and how have you dealt with it? How did you overcome that situation?
I don't know how to describe that, but I was one of the first few people who started using camera traps to photograph tigers. This is way back, 92, I'm talking about. And at that time, camera traps weren't even really readily available in India. So we actually created a camera trap using, some things from security cameras and things like that. And these group of friends from IIT and me, we got together, we made these camera traps. And I would be going out morning, noon, and night. And there, the battery life was only 24 hours, right? So there'd be lots of challenging situations because you'd have to go sometimes I had like 40 pairs of camera traps and I had to check every one every day. So I would be like, some of them, it would get to like really late in the evening. And you'd walk into the place where you put the camera trap, and on many occasions there was actually a tiger there. So that it was very sort of adrenaline-filled rush moments. But I remember one time when I had gone to check one of these camera traps, and we had a Nikon camera on that, and there was a flash flood, and I grabbed the camera, and it's always a pair, one right and one left. So I grabbed the right one and I jumped up, and the water came from under me. It was a flash flood. And I watched, to my horror, the left side camera getting submerged. And I was holding this right one thinking, now what am I going to do, And the flash flood passed and we went back and we dug it out. It was buried in sand. We took it, we shook it, dusted the sand off, took a hairdryer, dried it, took out the film. Part of it was okay. When I developed it, part had got gila, but the camera worked. So, that's a Nikon for you. You go like through anything and it works. The same sort of situation. I had friends, with Canon cameras and with other cameras, and they were like so protected of their gear. And here I was, okay, I dug it out of the sand. I'm shaking it, I'm hair drying it. Let's get to go. So it's been really fun. And of course, I've now used cameras underwater. I do underwater photography. I've used it in -20, -25 is the coldest I've been to. We've been all the way up to 50 degrees in one of the years in Madhya Pradesh. So extreme climatic conditions, extreme locations, and cameras now are just I mean, so much more developed from those days of the manual cameras that I had in the 1990s.
Well, camera technology definitely has come a long way, but
Mm.
because I am also interested in wildlife, I do a little wildlife photography, so I know that camera traps are still sort of a jugaad, even in the today in these times. So I
Yes.
can imagine what it was in '92. I
Yeah.
mean, must have
Yeah.
been a whole lot of jugaad going on.
Yeah. Only Jugaad.
I know. Uh, Same question again to Manek-san. What are the things that you have dealt it with in your photographic journey? I mean, because you
So
travel a lot, I'm sure you have a lot of
I
stories.
yeah. So if you ask this question to someone who primarily does street photography, you would know where the answer is going to go. You're shooting people without their permission. So I saw this. I mean, there were many such incidents that happened. Okay, but I'll tell you one story. Uh, it was incidentally very close in my neighborhood, in fact. Okay, and I observed there's this old lady who used to who reads a newspaper in the evening beside the window. And when the light falls, there's I think around 5:30 or so, you get a streak of light which sort of falls on her face like this, where she sits.
Diagonally.
And I wanted, yeah, and then it goes, and the room is sort of dark inside, and there's a lamp somewhere in the room. It looks dramatic, beautiful at the same time. It just there's something to that scene. You always you see a picture, like you when you cross that space, you see a picture. And I thought, whenever I pass that place, I never had a camera. So one day I was purposefully planning for it to happen. Okay, and I was just wandered around that area, and I was waiting for it to kind of get busy with the newspaper. And I got ready with the camera, started clicking a few shots, and she's in a like mid 80s or so, and then suddenly someone just shouted at me. I thought, what's happening? I realized her son was sitting across the room, and he ran out. Actually, he ran out, and he just almost ran towards me, attempted to beat me up or something like that. And he said, "What have you taken pictures or show me the camera and all that?" So he was very agitated, and what I did was I put the camera on the ground, and I said, "Hold on, this is where I stay. I'll show you all the pictures." I took my phone out, opened my Instagram, and I started talking to him. And he was very agitated. It's very difficult to engage with him. And I'm only sharing an extreme situation with you. It's not the first time this has happened. Like if you go to Kashmir or Jaipur, and if there are women, you can get into situations like that, so you have to be careful. But in this case, finally, when I showed him my phone from a distance, he understood that there are a lot of pictures, and I scrolled through it and said, "Look, I've taken pictures of so and so people, and look, this is what I do." And after a while, he then realized actually stay nearby, and he was all fine. He started laughing and he hugged me. And what is interesting is that that at some point, camera and privacy, how does that interact, especially with people, right? And I understand business photography is different, commercial photography is different. So that's one thing. The second thing is then how almost invisible, what is the footprint of the camera, that becomes important, right? Which is why one of my favorite lenses is the 40mm f2 on the Z mount, because it allows the camera to have a very small footprint. On a Z30 or a Z50, it can become very, very tiny. But unfortunately, that day I had 24 to 70 and on a Z6 too, so it was very conspicuous. So that was a situation. There were many situations like this, like that. I think most cases what works is holding your nerve and just attempting to speak and trying to de-escalate the situation, however is possible. I think what gets difficult if you're in a place where you don't understand the language, then it can get out of hand. It's just a human situation. It helps if there's a friend who knows the local language, stuff like that. Other than that, technically speaking, most challenging situations are always in low light. I know your next question, so we'll talk about that when you ask me the next question.
Perfect, perfect. But like you said, that when you don't know the language of a particular place, yes, definitely it can get difficult. But I think that's where art comes in handy. Like you said, you opened up your Instagram and showed them the images. I think that can speak a lot louder than your words.
But
Ma'am,
think
So,
ma'am
about it.
is
yeah, I was saying,
yeah,
so I do some people photography as well. And one year I was in Ethiopia,
yes,
and they have this fight which happens between two villages. And one guy in the middle of this fight, it was pouring rain, and these guys are like naked and they're fighting with these big sticks and they're breaking each other's heads and hands and feet. In the middle of all that, one guy saw someone else who he thought had stolen his cattle. So he picks up his AK-47 and he starts shooting. So there where I was, I mean, there's this illegal fight, which is the Donga. I'm in the middle of all of this mud / these tribal men fighting, and there's this guy with an AK-47 shooting randomly into the crowd. I mean, that was insane. And of course, nobody's interested in your phone, nobody's interested in your camera.
Yeah.
They're interested in killing each other right then and there for that thing. So that was a crazy situation. So I totally get what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks for sharing that example, because I think in most cases art doesn't work, especially in countries where people are just trying to figure out a
Yeah.
way to sustain themselves. They already
Yeah.
have hard lives, and when they
Yeah.
don't trust you
Yeah.
and outsider don't speak the language, there is no
Yeah.
there is no formula that applies well in those
No.
situations,
No.
right?
No.
Because
No.
understanding
Yeah.
that situation, I had to let him come very close to me in order for him to see the phone. Which means that I'm already inviting a certain amount of risk because he's getting closer to me.
Yeah.
So like, it's not a huge boat that I can show him. Look, this is just a photo. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, there's rarely anything that can work when the situation reaches a level when AK-47s are out. That's just like, I mean, what do you do?
AK-47. Wow. I got to read your book now.
Okay, done.
So, Kunal-san, what's your most challenging situation?
Mine is very different.
And does it involve AK-47s?
Like I would say that I mean most of my work is around shooting liquids and products. So the most challenging and the most fun part at the same time is shooting liquids outside of the container. Because when let's say I'm throwing these liquids on a product, I don't know what shape this liquid is going to take and what sort of light it's going to reflect. Okay, so there's always some sort of a mystery when shooting liquids. That only once I have a look at the final shot on the screen, I see that how beautiful it can turn out to be. So there's always, and no two shoots are the same. No matter how many times I shoot liquids, in every shoot there's a new challenge. Sometimes the liquid has to be of a different viscosity, density. Sometimes I have to dilute it, sometimes mix various colors to shoot as per the brief. So in my case, I mean, commercial photography, you have to do it as per the brief from the client side, from the advertising agencies. So you just have to get the results on the day of the shoot. And for that,
Right.
various different things to get it right then and there. And the interesting part, as I said, you can't just freeze the liquid when it is coming out. You say, stop, and I'll take a shot. You can't do that. Right? Just hold there for a second. Yeah, it doesn't work like that. So with liquids, it's always this mystery that it has. This is what keeps me exciting and going day in and day out.
And we've all seen your BTS videos and photos of the shoots that you do. They're nice, elaborate lighting setups, which obviously look very beautiful. But like you said, you can put all the lights that you want and have it perfect according to you. But then the liquid decides to go somewhere else, and that entire setup is just gone for a toss.
Yeah, so it's just imagine. Let's say if I need to light a product, or let's say fashion photography. So I think we can better relate with people here. So let's say you are doing a portrait shoot, and you put up all the lights accordingly. You know where the model is going to stand, so you create the set accordingly. But in case of liquids, you don't know, when you're going to capture that shot in frame, at what angle and what shape the liquid is taking. So the lighting set has to be very dynamic. The moment you see the result of the screen, accordingly you change the setup. And I use various different vessels. So various different containers of different mouths, smaller diameter, bigger diameter, depth, and different ways to toss and throw liquids in so many ways where I can have slight control over the shape that I want to create. And with experience now I know that if I need to create a certain shape, I need to do this. If I need a certain result, I can do this and achieve that. So yes, I mean it is always challenging, but with experience you learn so many things. So you can implement the brief accordingly at the day of the shoot.
That's very true. I've delved into product photography not a lot, and honestly haven't seen a lot of product photography work. But seeing your work, your BTS shots and images and videos and all of that, I mean it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Especially the reflections. Reflections are just a pain.
Absolutely. I mean, so it takes a lot of work to create one particular shot. So, at times, I had this funny experiences with clients who are just getting into product photography for the first time, and they just turn up to me and say, Kunal, we want 50 images, in a day or two. And then I had to sit back and explain that, there's so much work and planning involved that for one particular shot, it could take a day or more. It's a very methodical process, and it's very interesting, especially when you're shooting liquids. The way liquids can reflect and refract light can completely change the way the product looks, right? So it's so fascinating and so interesting for me because I always have a lot of interest in physics and optics, and getting to know how I can sculpt products using light. This whole thing is so fascinating and so interesting, that how you can make a boring product look exciting. That when you look at the product, the viewer should go like, wow, this is amazing. I want to indulge in this experience or buy this product or have this drink. So there are so many things associated with the photo. So many efforts and work goes into creating these images.
Very true, very true. Maneksan, you were saying something?
Yeah, I actually have a question for Kunal. I was going to ask, since I think you already hinted that all liquids are different and they behave differently, what's for you has been the hardest, most difficult liquid to shoot, number one? And number two question, how do you, and I think a lot of people will be interested in this answer, how do you handle clients? And to give a little bit of background, I have been part of agencies for a long time. So, and I understand the timeline and the pressure, and you need those 50 images. It's not two are not going to work. So in that situation, when the client comes to you with requirement for 50 images, how do you really deal with it? I mean, what's that process? So they are the two questions. What's the hardest request, and how do you deal with the pressure of the business?
So let's just take the business part first. So usually, I've seen that clients who have never done product photography or the advertising work, who are just starting out for the first time, they will have crazy demands because they don't know the process, how it works. So because most of the time what happens is they might have done some fashion shoots where they have been on the set and they see that the models are posing and the photographer is taking the shots, tuck, 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 tuck. So in that situation, the photographer can take, let's say, 50 shots in a go with different poses, and then they can sit and shortlist some 30 images out of that we are good with these 30 images. But in products, it doesn't work like that. Even if I change the angle of the product a bit, and the products are this small, and imagine the lights all around. So if I turn the product just a bit, I have to change the entire lighting set. Okay. So first of all, and I know, I mean, with the digital platforms, with Instagram getting very popular, all the clients want more and more images so that they can post it on a regular basis, for sure. So the one way to deal with clients who want, this kind of the quantity of images that you are saying, let's say 50, one way is to keep the concepts very simple, and so that you can create multiple images in it. Let's not get into creating very highly. So we have to come to a consensus that the photos, the concepts will be very simple, so that we can create more images at a given time. And definitely that don't look for quality. Quantity versus quality, always go with the quality. So have 10 really world-class images instead of having 50 average shots. So this is, and it's always a struggle. I mean, because with the social media, everybody wants more and more photos. So we always have to balance between quality and quantity. So,
Great. So, educating the.
Yeah, you're saying?
No, nothing. I think educating the client becomes.
Absolutely.
And I guess that's
Educating
a process.
Important because let's say brands that have been doing these kind of shoots for years, they understand. They know how much work goes into it and how many photos they can expect out of a shoot. And if you look at these, so again there are different categories. All the shoots are different. So some shoots are done for the ad campaigns, those are the biggest ones. Then shoots are done for the social media platforms, and then there are shoots done for the e-commerce part. So for the e-commerce, of course, you can have a big chunk of images you put in bulk, because that's very simple against a white background, and it's like pop and drop photography. Okay, you have the set remains the same. You just keep replacing the products and keep taking pictures. So you can create multiple images. Then comes the social media part, where you can again have beautiful images, really creative images, but the number of images can still be, let's say, 20 and 30. And when it comes to advertising images, and these are the images that you see in the magazines, in shopping malls, on hoardings, like the big budget shoots. In those kind of shoots, the images are always around, I mean, by and large, they are around, let's say, 5, 7, or max 10. Because the client knows that when they're creating these highly detailed images, and the kind of effort that goes into creating these photos is huge. So, yeah.
Interesting, very interesting. I mean, that's the process behind the images. But my next question now is, what is the gear that's helped you get through these things? Can be old camera equipment, can be the newest thing. What is a one piece of gear that's just stood the test of time, has been there, you can rely on? Lalika ma'am, if you want to go ahead with that.
Okay, so the one piece of equipment that I have absolutely adored in recent times is the D850. I just love the camera. It's always produced the best images for me, whatever the conditions. But it's recently been replaced in my series of
I think I know the answer.
important ones.
I know the answer.
The Z9. It's just incredible. I just love the Z9. It's magical, and for me as a wildlife photographer, the magic of having something that feels like a professional camera but is totally silent, with this huge beast of a machine in this little body. I mean, it's incredible. It's just my favorite piece of gear at the moment.
That's very true. Again, because I'm a wildlife photographer, I can totally relate to this. But the beauty of that camera is that it's just used by people from all genres of photography.
Yes. Yes.
Commercial photographers, wildlife photographers, even a lot of street photographers use that.
Yeah. But for me, Sahil, because I'm using huge big lenses, I always found it wasn't really balanced in my hand with a really small camera at the end of it. It just didn't feel right. This really caters to that need. You feel you've got something that's going to withstand everything you put it through, and sits on a 800 mm or a 400 mm lens, and really matches it and feels stable and balanced. It's magical.
That's very interesting that you pointed that out, and I'm glad that you noticed that, because in the recent past, especially with the mirrorless cameras, Nikon has really put an effort into making sure that the lenses are well balanced. So, a quick example, say the 400 4.5 that has just come out. It alone weighs around 1100 grams, which itself for a 400 mm is a great achievement. But the moment you put it on a Z9, it feels like it's just 500 or 600 grams. And for me, for people who've used the F mount 400s and 500s and 600s, That's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And even the Z800.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll come to that also. We'll talk about
Absolutely.
features and stuff.
Sure.
Manik-san, what's your favorite piece of equipment?
So there is very difficult to pick one favorite, and I think so. I'll then come back to the from Z9 where the conversation is right now. Let's come down to the smallest, the tiniest piece of Nikon, which is the Z30, and I've remembered to bring it here and talk about it. And so I'll tell you that I think being able to use a camera every day, is very important. How easy is it? Is it so? Like for Z9 does actually make longer lenses feel lighter. So when I put a Z9 on, when I put the 70-200 on the Z9, it did feel much easier to hold on to compared to the how it feels on a Z6 II. Similarly, surprisingly, with the Z30, when I put slightly larger, heavier lenses, it actually feels somehow, I don't know how Nikon has done it, feels very compact and light. It doesn't feel front, like there's no, it's not.
Doesn't feel front heavy.
No,
Doesn't
front heavy.
want
Doesn't
to
feel
pose.
front heavy. Yeah, and that's probably because of how nice the grip has been designed. And the second thing is that for such cheap, I shouldn't say cheap, for such an affordable camera, let's just talk about let's just admire the quality of the back screen. This is, like, I've used lots of other brands and they have these flip out screens, and this is just incredible. It is so tightly put together. It is so nice, right? It is ready for some rough use. So someone who is a content creator, has got a YouTube channel or something else, let's say, for daily content creation, this is fantastic. You can really rough it up. You can do stuff with it, and you don't have to worry. And I think the best photography always happens when you can push your limits, and the camera has to stay alive during that process. If it just dies on you, then it doesn't work. So, right? So, and I think every piece of Nikon gear gives me that level of satisfaction. Can you imagine? This is also weather sealed. And for whoever is watching this right now, this live session, this is something that is true specifically for Nikon. Having tried other brands, come to outside, it's very, very important. So it opens up spaces for me. What it does is for me is then it opens up locations that I can venture out to, and I can, it becomes possible because I am using a bunch of Nikon cameras. So all are my favorites. I'm actually, I did not buy the Z9 because for me it's too heavy and it's too conspicuous. And so I'm waiting probably the same level of capability in a smaller body. You know what I'm talking about. And if we go back, D750 is one camera that I love. The images it reproduces is different. D850 is the skin looks much better on D850, but D750 somehow it's just the right middle point for everything that you showed. The low light capability for, I think, 2014 camera, right?
Around that time. Later part of 2014.
Yes. So 2014, the low light capability on that camera is astounding. And it's not even a backside illuminated sensor. So if you have to pick one, I would pick D750 for how versatile it is, for how cheap it is still available, and how affordable it is. Again, sorry, affordable. And on the other hand, this. And I think, but having said all of that, I think Nikon's best is yet to come. I think it's yet to come.
Also, I think I'd like to point out that the 850 and 750 still hold their position in the market. Yeah. They're extremely old cameras, but they're still not outdated.
No.
Yes.
And I think I agree with that. I think 850 and 750 are probably my favorites as well. They're just incredible machines. Kunal-san, are we expecting the same kind of answers from you, or is it something different?
Yeah. Mine is pretty similar to Latika ma'am. So, of course, I mean, like, I loved the D850 and it has stood the test of time. I've been using that camera for so long. But then, of course, right now it's going to be the Z9 without question. So, the thing is that with all the product photography, everybody is moving towards videography as well. So, right now, more and more clients come up with not only photography but videography requirements as well. And what
Yeah.
happens if I build a set around a product for photography, I'll be using those flashes and strobes. And for video, I'll need to replace all the flashes with continuous lights, right? And even while doing so, it's very difficult to match the colors between photography and photography because the lights are different, the settings are different. So it's very difficult to do that. But right now I'm experimenting on using continuous lights for both the things. So imagine if we just have one set with continuous lights where I can do both photography and videography. Having this exact same colors and the same photos. So in that situation, I can really very creatively use the Nikon Z9's FPS, like which is a 20 FPS raw burst. And if you have seen those animations these days, where the product just moves like this, have a jerky motion, those are called motion and
Stop motion.
Stop motion.
yeah. So what happens is that when you create a stop motion, the camera stays fixed on a tripod, and you take a photo of the product here, then you change the position of the product, change the position again, take multiple frames, and then you create a stop motion animation. But imagine if it's a liquid. You can't again tell a liquid to stop there and taking a shot, stop again and taking a shot. Liquid just goes in a flow. So imagine with liquid, if I can use Z9's continuous burst of 20 frames per second raw, tuck, 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 and 20 FPS is very close to 24 FPS.
Pretty cool.
Used for video,
Correct.
right? So imagine the power of using these 20 raw images on a burst and editing them in Photoshop just the way I edit my photos. So even the final result, the stop motion or the cinematograph will look very much like a video, where it can have colors and look as out of the photos. So I'm very excited about using this particular feature, creating stop motions and cinemagraphs. And then of course, I mean, if you talk about video, the 8K feature on Z9 is super. And I mean, to be honest, I'm still using 4K. 4K is good enough for the kind of work that we do. But like having 8K is like future-proofing your camera. And of course, I mean, when I went from my D850 to Z9, and talking about all the mirrorless features, I'm so happy with these things. For instance, let's say the electronic viewfinder. Using the EVA and in manual focus, I can just focus with pinpoint precision on the products, which is so good. And of course, the USB power delivery, that is again very important for somebody, for a product photographer who is doing, let's say, compositing, because we don't want our camera to move even by a millimeter. So having this continuous power delivery through this new feature in the mirrorless cameras is absolutely amazing. Yeah. So I mean, I can go on, but like in short, I'm really happy with the Z9 and the new mirrorless technologies.
Yeah.
Taking it a step further, you mentioned that the 20 FPS RAW is very close to 24 that's used for video. You also get 30 FPS. You don't get RAW, but you get full-size JPEGs.
Yeah. So
I mean, that's a whole video for you ready at 30 FPS.
Yeah, definitely the possibilities are endless. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not putting any limit on the creativity. I'm saying we can also use JPEGs for that matter. But looking at it from a commercial perspective, if we have those raw images, then it really gives you that flexibility in post to color correct, match, and have that consistency. But of course, I mean, if you look at like reels are getting really popular on Instagram, and more and more brands are also moving towards having a content vertical format, for the reels and different aspects. So definitely JPEGs also have their own importance. So I'm not denying the fact. Definitely we can use JPEGs for so many different creative ways possible.
True. I mean, continuing from that, like you said, reels have become very popular, and we've started shooting video in vertical format. I remember just a few years back, that was a complete no-no.
Right.
You the moment you told a cinematographer to shoot vertical, he'd give you the worst possible look that he could. And just see how the tides have turned, things have changed.
That's true.
So, I mean, moving forward from that, again, talking about the advancements and how the photography scene has changed so much. Uh, Latika ma'am, what are your thoughts on the future of photography? Again, seeing the influx of mirrorless cameras and the whole loads of features that they bring with them, like we've discussed. Are you excited? What's your thoughts on that?
Okay, so for me, besides the whole mirrorless thing, the introduction of the phase Fresnel lenses is, it's that's been a game changer. I mean, for a wildlife person, I look like the proverbial donkey when I'm going into the field because I have like a 36-kilo camera bag. I have the 800 mm, the 400 2.8. I have all of the lenses going down to a wide and 4 camera bodies, and it was crazy. But I mean, the new 800, it's half the weight of the old 100. The 400 with the built-in teleconverter, it's so much lighter. I mean, you can handhold it. Even someone like me can handhold it for an entire shoot. So I think I'm very excited about how the size of the great lenses is coming down to make it more possible for you to travel with them. When you're a solo photographer and you're not doing like a big commercial shoot and you don't have a huge budget to carry your equipment, the ability to be able to pack it all into a camera bag and heft it onto your shoulder is just huge. It allows me to do so much more with my photography. Having access to something that goes from a 14 mm all the way through to a 800 mm in my camera bag all at one time. So that's something I'm very excited about. I love the power of, going from a film with only 30 something pictures on a reel of film to your new cards that you're using now with 1,000 photographs in one camera at one time. I mean, that's magical. To be able to shoot so much video footage without changing a card, that's incredible. Because when you're shooting wildlife, there's no retakes. There's no way that you'll ever see that again. And if you're spending time changing cards in the middle, you lose the moment that you've gone for, and you've spent so much time and effort to get there at the right time to see that behavior, and then you miss it because you've run out of card. So the ability of recording so much data at one moment, and also, I mean, of course, the 20 frames per second, I mean, action shots, low light shooting, all of that. So I think it's just the rise of the phoenix, and Nikon is just waiting to show the world just what it's capable of. This is the beginning. It's a teaser.
Also, adding to the point that you made that everything's now just become very compact and lightweight. That also helps in reducing airline extra baggage costs, which are
Absolutely.
again a
No, but
pain.
Sahil,
That can be a pain.
you take camera equipment and you check it in and you get out in a vague country in Africa, you're almost guaranteed not to receive the equipment. Okay? So you go on this trip which has cost so much money and so much time to organize, to find the right guide to take you to the right place, and you land at that place and you have no equipment. So you need to be able to carry it on you to make sure, okay, kapde nahi, but at least you have your gear. You can manage. So it's very important.
Yeah, very true, very true. Manixon, coming to you, what's your take on this?
So I think the question is the future of photography. Now, uh, I'd like to take a step back therefore, because you asked a very big question. It's a very 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 large question. There are two parts to it. There is photography has been always about a machine that creates pictures, right? So there's a tool part of it and there's a people and intention part of it. And for a long time we know now that The question is photography going to be relevant? Because now everyone is doing it. If everyone can do it, then how is it special? That's the this question somehow sounds right when you hear it for the first time. But let me tell you, the question is actually, it's a wrong way to look at it. The question is irrelevant. When more people do it, more of them start loving it. It becomes more relevant. It's like saying, are cars becoming more relevant because more people have it? Or AC is becoming more relevant in India because more people have it? So photography's relevance is not going down. On the contrary, it's going up because more people are getting introduced to it through a smartphone. Now, what is the future of photography? Is linked to how people look at it as a medium of expression. If more people look at it as a medium of expression versus some other thing, maybe, let's say, why is fashion very important for people? Because people think what they wear reflects who they are. So it's becoming important. So people buy more and more stuff to present themselves well. Now, a writer would do the same thing with writing. If more people think that photography and videography is a way to express themselves and connect, then photography's importance will be on the rise. And as it goes up, then I think solutions that make it easy will become more and more relevant. And they will eventually move up from a good smartphone or even a great smartphone to a half decent camera, because a half decent camera is always going to be much better than a very good smartphone. So one part of the future of photography is that this thing that, it's on, the industry is on a decline. I think that's a fallacy. It's just waiting to explode because more people is at the precipice when they're just about to realize, I love it and I would like to do it better. It's just a matter of time. That's one part of the future. The second part of the future is, where is the technology going? Now, there's not one, but it's, I think, 2-3 websites where you can just speak to it and it will give you beautiful looking art. Now, therefore, the other part of the question is, are photographers becoming relevant? So firstly, is photography relevant? Then photographers are becoming irrelevant as something that requires a specific kind of skill. Now, I think if, and I work with brands very closely. If we go and tell a brand, listen, there's a beautiful site where you can just speak to it and give you art, they'll laugh at you because briefs are so difficult to get right even after 1 week of discussion. So imagine a brand manager or some guy will have to get that good in writing down his brief, really explaining what he's got in his mind for that AI machine to actually reproduce what that guy has in mind. Then what about feedback? Right? So photographers are not going to get relevant for many, many years to come, because the human process of business and the human process of creation is a very different ball game. That's not going to go anywhere. Just because human beings are involved in business processes, photographers are going to be relevant for a very long time to come, and very, very, probably many decades to come. It's not going to be possible to replace it with AI. However, AI will have to become a part of cameras and camera ecosystems, and
which it is.
Right, and some brands have done it with, let's say, post footage stabilization. So they read the gyro data on your camera and then they stabilize it post, right? So that's a simple way to use AI. And as you go forward, Nikon has done it. Nikon have done it with a solution that they provided as a firmware update on the Z6 II and the Z7 IIs, where you could actually change the tonality of skin in highlights or
portrait impression
balance, right? So that's also a simple way to understand. This is AI at the end of the day. It understands the color and changes the hues and the tones very smartly, and it's got a very easy interface. Now the question is, how will computational photography be integrated into camera platforms? We don't have an answer for that. We know what Google are doing. We know what Apple are doing. We've seen some sort of glimpse of what they can do, but I don't think overall camera manufacturers have gone there yet, and they will eventually have to go there. And so that's a big unknown. So I think that's the other part. So although AI will not replace human beings and photographers, tools will have to get aligned with the existing technology. And I think that's a big space of opportunity, and definitely for Nikon.
That's a very interesting point of view that you put there, and I think I relate to that a lot because just today, on the occasion of World Photography Day, I put up a story on Instagram that was on very similar lines, saying that World Photography Day is for me, it's a reminder uh, to just continue looking at the world the way I look at it, because everything and anything mostly has been photographed in this world. There's rarely anything that's not been photographed. But your unique perspective is your unique perspective. So I think as long as you have that, you'll always be relevant and you'll always be unique. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Kunal-san, what's your what excites you the most about camera technology and the future of photography?
Yeah, I mean, just to put it simply, I think that we can look at it from two sides. So let's say there's a technical skill part, and then there's a creative skill part. So the technical skill part, will be taken care by the technology, and the creative skills is like doing the composition or the storytelling part. So that remains with the photographer. So for instance, if you look at the focusing technologies, back in the day, people still used to get some amazing photos with manual focus. You look at the work of Steve McCurry, photos that he has created, and I'm sure in wildlife and landscapes and sports photography. So back in the day, mastering the manual focus was a skill, okay, that you had to work on it to get beautiful images. But today, with the advancements in technology, you can just point your camera anywhere you want a shot. It will be intact, sharp focus, right? So all these technical skills will be taken care by the camera. And so all that would be left to us as photographers would be the creative part. So that is what I'm excited about, that we won't have to worry about all the technical settings, remembering all those small things. Maybe audio will get so better that we won't have to put up, fix 10 different mics in different places to get good audio in camera. Maybe all those technical things would get sorted by the technology. So we can just focus on the creative side. So, I'm really excited.
That's very true, because there are these photo editing softwares, I won't name them, that advertise AI composition.
Right.
And I've tried it. It's not good. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's just not good. AI hasn't reached that level, and I don't think it will. Because again, AI was programmed by one person, and every person has a different, unique view at looking at the world. It's just how is AI going to predict that? I don't think that's possible.
Can I add to
Yeah,
that?
please.
I think what is happening right now is like when you look at a child speak for the first time and you go, wow, the baby can speak, right? And you're like, you're so happy. What is happening right now is that when you look at a machine speak back to us, it's like a baby, oh my God, it can do it. Right now, we're celebrating the wonder and the surprise in the fact that it can actually do something very close to what a human being would do. It is not necessarily our admiration. It is not Van Gogh or Picasso. It is not our admiration. It is our wonder at, oh, it can do this. Wonderful. But when you task it to do a specific job that a client asks Kunal to do, or Latika ma'am will have to do because she comes from a point of perspective. That perspective is a human perspective. That will never be replaced.
Agreed.
So I think AI will not progress until AI is the master of deciding the perspective that is needed. The perspective is the content creator's job. Sorry, I'm slipping back to Hindi, but the intention. So much of photography and content creation is intentional. That intention is within us. That therefore it can probably become a better tool. That's all.
Yeah, I think then we are all in agreement that AI is a great tool to have in your arsenal, but it just can't replace a photographer.
Yeah, I mean, it can solve all the technical aspects, so we can focus on the whatever it is,
True. Unfortunately, we are towards the end of the session. I know all of us can go on talking about photography for a long time, but unfortunately, we have the constraint of time today. So just as final closing remarks, I'll just ask everyone uh, anything that you want to communicate to budding photographers on the occasion of World Photography Day. Any tips of the trade? We've already shared quite a few, but if you want to condense it down, anything, any sort of advice that you want to give people, Latika ma'am, if we can start with you.
Thank you. I think for me, the most important thing is just to say if you want to be a photographer, learn to keep your eyes open and be interested in whatever's around you. I hear too often people saying, it's everything is boring. I'm bored. When you're somebody who's a photographer, you're never bored because there's
Yeah.
always something or somebody to look at, a scenery, a wildlife, a person, the way a bottle's being opened, the way a liquid's being poured, the way a bird is flying off a wire. There's always something interesting to see. So just open your eyes, look around you, and keep taking note. And as you learn to look at what's around you, you look and see light, you see shadows, you see colors, you see the world as it is in this magical place, then you feel like capturing those things that you are seeing, and you slowly develop into a more and more interesting photographer. So I think that's the message that I want to give today, rather than going really technical.
I Recently, I think I heard a comedian say this. He was asked the question that how do you overcome a creative block? So this is exactly what that guy said. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the comedian, but he said, I don't believe in creative blocks. If you have a creative block, that you're not seeing the world enough, you're not consuming enough content.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what he said.
Yeah.
Something will at least make you jealous.
Mahek-san, what would you like to tell the audience?
So I think it's actually very simple. We are all born with a finite time in our lives, and in my mind, time has a simple purpose in our life. It has to serve one thing. It has to give us happiness. Time, 70 years you're alive. This 70 years of opportunity to be happy. So whatever makes you happy, just do it, and include that thing that makes you happy in your routine. Because what happens is that in our daily lives is so jam-packed with a lot of activities, what makes us happy versus what is important and urgent right now takes a precedence. What makes us happy is pushed to the next day, and the next day, then the next year, maybe a decade later, then you're married with 3 kids, then your kids will do it for you. So what makes you happy should be part of your routine. And if photography is your happiness, do it. It's that simple.
Yeah, I think that's quite simply put, but quite important thing that you've said. Kunal-san, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, for commercial photography, I would say that create your own niche, be unique, and work hard. And always remember that, as I say, when the goings get tough, the tough get going. Okay, so don't give up. If you really like what you're doing, just keep doing that. Create your own niche, be unique, so that you can be different from the crowd. Be yourself. Your photos should speak about yourself, your style. So it's like, whenever they see this photo, they'll be able to recognize you that this photo is created by that guy. It should reflect your personality. So be unique, guys.
Yeah, I think we're all coming back to the same thing, that just be yourself, be unique, because you are unique. Your point of view is unique. Your perspective is unique. Your life experiences are unique, which have shaped your perspective on life.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that's just the perfect point on which to end this conversation. Thank you so much again, all of you, for joining, and the audience for joining in. It's been a wonderful conversation on a very special day for all of us. So again, thank you so much, and we hope to do this again. So till the next time, again, thank you so much, and see you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for having
You're
me.
most
It was
welcome.
great to meet all three of you. Thank you.
Same
You
here.
too.
All right.
You too.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you, audience, and have a great World Photography Day. Thank you.